Hello and welcome to the harvest number 10. 10 is a great number, it's very exciting. As you can see, it means that we've got a broken ordering of our blog posts, our tree rendering. It's just like one of the many little things, little joys of building a framework is the long tail of considerations. Uh, anyway, so here's the blog post. I've sort of been thinking about how Beat started, the um, the core idea before it kind of exploded into a meta framework, um, and and coming back to that because I've basically rewritten that core part of the framework recently. Okay, so there's this idea in most popular in Lisp, right? It's like this idea of homoiconicity. I'm not a Lisp person, but I do find the idea and the terminology quite interesting. Um, well, particularly because that's kind of what Beat is, but for the application layer. So as a concrete example, you have like the scene format. You can use that for things like for a game scene, for characters, and also for like UI layouts. And what Beat does is it uses that same format to encode behavior patterns, control flow, things like behavior trees, state machines. Those are these are very general structures as well. Like they're popular for AI, but really, like, you can describe a call stack as a behavior tree. It's like going in, popping out, that sort of thing. So it's quite a, like, it's like a Turing complete kind of pattern. Um, and so once you start to be able to do that, once you start being able to encode that behavior into a scene format, then you just get all these, like, things get like really cool, really interesting. I mean, because like serialization is what so many important patterns are built on. Like in games, that's scenes, that's non-technical people being able to safely edit really big important parts of a game. In web, serialization gives us, like, hydration, stuff like that. It's super important. And so if you can do that, if you can get behavior into that format, that's kind of that's the core idea of it anyway. But the most recent implementation, it's had a lot of iterations. The most recent, the one before just now, was built on observers, and so they're a bit like, an event-based system. I'll shoot out an event. Maybe someone's going to listen, and react to it, and so that's how this whole tree was like communicating. And things were, the API is quite beautiful, but the implementation was quite messy. It was worth it, but it was messy. And so things have matured a bit since then. We've gotten the whole framework's quite. There's a lot of async now, so like things are just like natively async. And so that's unlocked these async patterns for these behaviors, which is like just like such a simplicity boost. So for example, in a sequence, you can just pass the input around. You don't need to do this like, in an event, you sort of got to do this arc mutex option take. Oh, I hope someone hasn't already taken it, or I'll have to like return an error. Whereas this is like a safe kind of, it's just a single function. So things are a lot nicer under the hood. One of the big motivators for this was routers. Just because, like, obviously you can't clone a request if it's got like a stream or something like that. So you really do want to be able to elegantly pass it around. So a concrete example is here. You'd have the help handler. All that does is checks for the help param, right? So if I type in like help, then it's going to give me like, what are all the endpoints for this route, instead of rendering the route. There's only one, but if it doesn't get that, then it just passes the request on to the route handler, which is what we're seeing here. And again, if that doesn't do it, then I guess we can do what's the not found handler. Oh, internal error. Pretend you didn't see that. Okay, something's not working there. Okay, so that's one example. Another, which unfortunately has rendered terribly, is the agent harnesses. So that's uh, where just to demonstrate the versatility of this pattern, where you'd have like turn taking in a chat conversation, right? So you'd have the system prompt. That's not actually a that's not actually going to be a part of the sequence because that only happens once. That's why we're saying allow no tool. Then you'd have the agent would do its thing. Now the tools, like for example an adding tool, that's just a sub behavior, right? So the agent's gonna make its call, get its response back. If the response contains a tool call, before yielding to the next step, it's going to execute that tool call. So yeah, just as a demonstration, you can really there's a lot you can do with these kinds of patterns. Okay, yeah, so a little bit more on serialization. What can this unlock? I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of a key to malleable software. If we want to let users really shake up our applications, or we want to let users or their agents, whatever. If we want them to be able to really make big changes, then we also want to be very safe about how we do that. Modifying source code, even sharing source code, can be problematic. So yeah, so serialization, like this powerful serialization, I think is quite interesting. And one more note, this is a bit of a follow-on from last month's browser when I was doing all that formatting. I kind of just ended up building a I kind of just ended up building a browser. So I'll just show you the demo of that. It wasn't really intentional. So like this just happened because I was building the formatting, right? The HTML parser and the markdown parser, and then I was building the renderers, the HTML renderer, the Ratatouille renderer, and I was like, wait a minute, can't I just plug a HTML parser into a Ratatouille renderer? What happens there? And yeah, a couple of hours later, a little bit of logic. This is I think it's less than 500 lines of code. Just a little bit of navigation logic, and you got yourself like a basic working web browser. Obviously, I mean, if there's a framework, if there's a long tail of a framework, the long tail of web browser rendering, I'm sure, is massive. And that's not, it's not really a focus of mine. But like it's fun. Like alt left, you go back. Alt right, you go forward. It's kind of like it's interesting. It's kind of like I don't know. It just surprised me how easy that sort of became. And what kinds of things you could do with it. I've also added just for fun. I've added a bunch of these are just a bunch of like popular Web 1.0 type sites, because of course like JavaScript, CSS, that's another world entirely. But but simple like essays and that sort of thing could be with a little bit of rendering work, it could be a nice way to view stuff. Yeah, but anyway, that's just more of a fun project, so more of an aside to see what I could do with what I was building. Yeah, all right, and that's pretty much it for this harvest. Now, yeah, again, like things are still very much like in development, changing a lot. If it is something that you're interested in, come say hi in the Beatmatch Discord. Otherwise, yeah, appreciate the interest.